One of the most common claims you'll hear to this day is Christ stood with the oppressed. And that statement is true. But what most people usually mean is very different from what Christ himself actually did. So today, let's let Christ speak for himself and cut straight to the heart of the matter. In the book of John, chapter 9, 1 through 3, "And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did this sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, Neither has this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him." Notice what happens immediately. The disciples want a moral explanation. Who's at fault? But Jesus refuses that frame. He does not assign blame, he does not romanticize the suffering, and he doesn't call blindness a virtue. He reframes the entire situation in terms of purpose. What Christ seems to actually be doing is telling us plainly why he is standing with the oppressed, that the works of God should be made manifest in him. This is crucial. The oppressed are not presented as morally superior. They're not presented as the final state. They're not presented as an identity to preserve. They're presented as the site of God's work. Christ does not join the blind man in his blindness. He does not affirm the blindness as his destiny that he's stuck with from birth. He heals him. And through that healing, truth is revealed. Standing with the oppressed in Christ's model means moving towards restoration, not freezing people where they are. And here's where the modern claim collapses. Today, standing with the oppressed often means affirm the condition, protect the wound, refuse transformation in the name of compassion. But Christ's compassion moves somewhere, towards healing, towards sight, towards truth, towards light. To stand with someone without calling them forward isn't Christ-like. It's abandonment, disguised as empathy. Christ stands with the oppressed precisely because he refuses to leave them there. So yes, Christ stood with the oppressed, but not to validate their suffering as an identity, not to sanctify their condition as an identity, not to remain where they were. He stood with them to do the works of God. Healing, restoration, and illumination. If your vision of compassion has no path forward, no transformation, no healing, then you may be standing near Christ, but it's not standing with him. After saying Christ stood with the oppressed, the next claim follows closely on its heels. Christ was a revolutionary. And that sounds compelling, until you slow down and ask, what kind of revolutionary tells his followers not to fight? Like, honestly. So let's deal with this carefully and directly from the text. Before we talk about Christ rejecting violence, we need to clear up one passage that people keep rushing to weaponize. Luke, chapter 22, verse 36. "He that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one." At first glance, that sounds like a call to arms. But context matters, and outcome matters more. When the disciples respond, they say, "Lord, behold, here are 2 swords." And Christ replies, "It is enough." 2 swords? For 12 men? Like against Roman authority, how is that going to prepare them for anything? Certainly not a revolt. That is symbolic sufficiency, not militant intent. So why does Christ say this? Because he is preparing them for a world where they will no longer be shielded by his physical presence. The sword functions as a deterrent, a signal of vulnerability in a dangerous world, not a tool of conquest. And we know this because the moment the sword is actually used, Christ shuts it down immediately. When Peter strikes the servant of the high priest, Christ responds, "Put up thy sword into thy sheath." No hesitation, No later corrections. This isn't changed at another date. No, not yet. This is decisive and immediate. Whatever the sword was for, it was not for advancing the kingdom. Christ permits no violence in his name, even in his own defense. That alone disqualifies him from being a revolutionary in the historical sense. So in John chapter 18:36, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight. This is not a metaphor. It's a definition. Revolutionary movements fight because their authority depends on coercion. Christ refuses violence because his authority operates prior to power, at the level of truth, conscience, and transformation. So no, Christ was not a revolutionary. He did not overcome systems by force. He did not seize power. He did not authorize violence. He allowed enough threat to prevent chaos, but forbade force from becoming corrupt. Revolutionaries take power and hope. Virtue follows. Christ transforms people and lets power reorder itself, or even collapse. And that difference is not accidental. It's the entire point.